run Trent. Sound like Trinity is now recording us as well. Okay. Anyway, that's some details there. The other thing I want to hint at is we do have a few groups that'll actually use sales accounts. So really all the sales accounts are under this. They'll use sales accounts or even just individual users to say this is Arkansas versus somewhere else. That's okay, but we recommend against it. We really want to track who we're paying at the end of the month. And that's the subtle difference between users and sales accounts here. Okay. And like I said, if you have questions, type them in and let Trinity kind of know if you have any questions on it. All right. Next big area is work groups. I'm often surprised when I go into a work group here and I end up not having, something in here. Let me see, not having different territories set up. Okay. So I'm seeing more and more larger groups that have, grown over the years, and they're having multiple territories like Arkansas or Mississippi or something like that. And they're not splitting them up by work group. And that's kind of a disadvantage there. If nothing else, just on the reporting, because usually I find out when the owner calls up and says, hey, I want to know how I'm doing Arkansas versus Mississippi or something like that. And I can't do it because the orders are not recorded in such a way that we can actually run a report and split the numbers out. And that's the reason for a work group. If you get it set up, there's a lot of other things as far as security we can go through and other details. But as far as reporting goes, you really need to break up your territories, the different sales territories that you're trying to track using work groups out there. And I've seen this done in some other ways that are kind of interesting in business models. So we have more and more groups that are doing electrical products and other types of business they want to track independently from lighting. And again, controls, I usually lump that into lighting because just kind of the way the business moves there. But at the end of the day, if you use a work group that says, hey, what are my electrical products in Arkansas doing versus my lighting in Arkansas, I can run those two different numbers and get kind of a feel for how business is growing or whatever I need to find out there. Okay. And like I said, there is security and other reasons for using work groups. It's for the groups that have really figured out how to use work groups, we've created a lot of features around it. But as far as reporting goes, think about how you want to report the different sales territories and set it up properly. And again, train your staff on how to mark the orders. And we'll go through that here in a minute as well. Okay. So that's work groups. Manufacturers. We'll get in the real meat of this here in a minute. So I'm going to go in manufacturers here, and I don't know what all I have in here. So let's go for something safe here. So a couple of items I want to go through on manufacturers that are pretty important for our setup. So number one is, or actually one that's very underutilized, I think, is this product type. So I have this represented vendor here. I have it set it up as lighting, but I have other entries in here as well as far as switchgear, lamps, and controls. There's more and more reports in Oasis that we've started adding because people have finally started discovering the product type. But like in Moser 2, you can go and say, hey, show me my sales by manufacturer. Okay, well, show me by product group or product type, I'm sorry. And what ends up showing there is, well, I'm doing so much in lighting, so much in controls, and so much in whatever, I set up here. And it's just another high level report where I can look at it as a top level report and see what's going on there. But again, if it's not set up, we can't do it. This one's actually pretty easy. You can just set up the manufacturer and it happens. But some of the other things that we'll get into, if you don't set those up early, we're kind of out. You can't collect the data until all the transactions are touched. But this one you can just set up on the manufacturing. Okay, but every so often I'll bump into a rep that's had to, or for one reason or another, separated out the same factory and has it in Oasis multiple times. And when I start asking questions like, well, why are you doing that? There's a lot of reasons for it. One of the biggies that just kind of blows my mind is one for each sales territory. So I might end up with this manufacturer for Arkansas and the same manufacturer for Mississippi. That's the wrong way to do it. You're working too hard on that one. So go ahead and set up a work group for Arkansas, a work group for Mississippi, and then set up that manufacturer one time in there. And then you can run reports and see how you're doing with the manufacturer overall versus how they're doing in each one of those different territories. Okay. Another thing I see is every so often and this kind of a side note on this, there'll be a reason that we're given is like, well, the manufacturer, because they have their connectivity or something like that, they are asking us to split up the brands in a certain way. Don't let them control your data is the biggest thing I'll say there. Give us a call. There's usually a way to work around that, because you really should have that one manufacturer in there at one time. Now, you still need one brand per. So, I'm going to pick on some names here, and apologize for everyone up front, but if you end up with like the Dualite brand is one you represent, put them in there, or Halo, or whatever it is. Put those factories or those brands in there, and then parent-child them up. And that's another thing I'll show here fairly quickly. I don't know if I have a good setup in this one. But let's go to, I end up with brand, sorry, this is just something we set up a long time ago to be as agnostic as we can on the manufacturers. But we end up with a brand headquarters, so wherever the main brand is, I have them set up as a parent, okay? And then what I'll do is each one of my brands here, I'll do brand A, and I'll set up as the parent manufacturer brand HQ. And then there's a lot of other settings associated with transactions we can talk through with you on that one. But the main thing that this does is, again, if I have all the different, a conglomerate with all these different brands underneath of it, the conglomerate is set up as the headquarters, if you will. And then I can run reports across the entire conglomerate, or I can split them up by brand. That's just an option for me. And then there's a goals tab over here. If you want to talk about that sometime, give us a call or anything. It is kind of going away. Some folks are trying to get me to keep it, but we do have a new thing called goals tile that's way better. So, take a look at that and see what we can do there. Make that work for you better. Right. So that's manufacturers. Didn't have anything more than, well, there's a lot of settings in there I'd love to go over, but those are the ones I'm going to go over this time. It's the best way to explain that. So, all right, customers. This one has been a pain point for the support team here, and usually I get drug into these as well. But what I'd like to say right now is, if you have duplicate customer entries, start cleaning them up now, and just don't wait. Number one thing you can do is inactivate all but one of those brands. And I've already got pushback literally today on one group saying, oh, but we haven't received the resale, we got paid all of the transactions. Like, no, the resale transaction, basically they do resale and they haven't got all the resale numbers back in. I was like, go ahead and pick the ones you want to keep. Pick the one you want to keep as the entry in Oasis that will continue to represent that customer from now on. And then all the other duplicates, go ahead and mark them in inactive. And if you happen to get a check in that's marked against those others, we'll walk you through how to apply that check. But the biggest thing is you have to stop the bleeding on this. That is a critical element on this. If you have duplicates in here, you're going to end up with reports that aren't terribly useful, really, because you really don't know how well you're doing with the, whether it's a distributor, an architect, or anybody else, because all the money's been split out among all these duplicate entries in there. And that is going to kill your reporting real fast. And I usually get complaints on that about how Oasis isn't working right or whatever. But anyway, set it up right. It works very well. Later, if you want to merge this data, we can help you with that. That is a tedious process, and we'll probably end up charging you for it, but ask anyway, because a lot of folks will be like, well, how much is this? It's going to be, tens of thousands of dollars. And we look at it, it's like, yeah, it's going to be, I don't remember the numbers. And you're like, well, geez, let's do it, because that's pretty cheap, because the result is exactly what they needed to get done. Right. The other thing you can also do is parent-child chaining. I won't, throw the example out here, but you can set up like Graybar as a headquarters, and then all the all the branches underneath that, and let it roll up on your reports. So then I can split out all the branches of Graybar, or I can show them as one conglomerate or main distributor out there. So it's just a setting in a lot of the reports. Okay. And again, there's goals in there. Much better to use the goals tile than the old goals reporting in there. So it isn't the goals reports are going away anytime soon. It's just the goals tile works much better. All right. Let's go to the next one. User search tags. So this is another one. Every so often I'll have somebody who's like, well, why didn't you tell me about that feature? And it's like, well, it's been in there forever. But anyway, under software tags, You can set up all these different search tags in here. We just have all kinds of little things set up in here for testing is basically what this is for. And each one of them is set up with a different type. So basically I have a customer date field, a PO choice field, that's a little drop down item on there, and so forth. If you have any questions on setting this up, give us a call. I'll show you a real fast one just for example here. But these are great because I can add things to a quote that flows over to an order and I can report on it. That's the key element there. So I can use it as part of a search. I can throw it on a listing. I can't usually roll it up or total the fields there because that's really requires more computation than what we allow right now. But setting it up in the use has been so powerful for so many users over the years. It's just one of those things that gets missed a lot. So let's show you this. So main thing is I'm under configuration and software, and then tags. I'll go ahead and add a new tag real quick, or user search tag. And there we go. And it just adds a row. You probably put one on the bottom down there. And I'll just say just testing. Okay. And you have to give it a type. And what this is trying to hint at is it a contact? So that's under the contact section. Is it a customer? That's under the customer section. Manufacturers in the manufacturer section, and so forth. So what I'll start with is a quote. And notice there's one down here that says quote PO. That means it's going to start on the quote and roll over to the PO. And I just want a yes, no, little checkbox that says yes or no. And there's another checkbox that says no. And I'll just click on it right there. And when we get into projects here in a minute, I'll look for just testing and there'll just be a little checkbox. That's all it is. The main thing is in the search routines, there'll also be the same little checkbox where you can literally say, give me everything where just testing is checked yes, and it'll pull up those quotes and then I can total them or something like that. Okay. Hit okay. Oh yeah, that's because I did something funky. There we go. All right. So user search tags, the key element right here, and I'm glad I put this up here because I almost moved on. The key element here is, especially with search tags, but really with anything else within Oasis, it really is just a data collection area. And the key element here is if you have a business process that surrounds this, there's usually a positive result. The hard reality I have to deliver sometimes to the business owner is, hey, yeah, you set up that search tag in January, you told all your folks to go use it, and that was it. December rolled around and they went to run a report, and guess what? Nobody ever clicked the little checkbox that said whatever it was that was important, and we no longer can, we simply can't run a report on it because there's no reinforcement of that business process. And that's really true for most of Oasis there. So if you have the process and people buy into it, you'll get a good result out of it. And if you don't, it won't happen. That's just the hard reality. But that's double so for user search tags as opposed to a lot of the other items I'll show you here in a minute. Okay, and I think we covered the rest of that. Oh, by the way, do think of this here as well. There's been a number of times I'll open up a quote. You'll see ours here. This is a testing database, but I'll actually be at a customer site and I'll take a look at their quote on the general tab, and there's like scrolling forever trying to see all the search tags in there. And there's really two things that tells me. Number one is there's probably no process associated with any of them. And number two, there's entries in there that nobody even understands what they were or might have been used for. So go through periodically and take a look at the search tags. And generally, if it's this long, it's probably too much stuff in there. Go through, clean it up, and just, you know, understand what people are actually using and making and getting value out of really. Okay, search tags. All right, projects and quotes. All right, I'm going to slow down a little bit on this one because this is really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And I'm beginning with yet another little saying here. So the road to good intention, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And this is so true when it comes to reporting. But make sure that whatever I show you here, if it sounds like it's a great idea and resonates well, and you bring it back to the team, say, hey guys, let's do this. Make sure that the effort that you're going to place your quoters or customer service team or whoever it is, whatever that process is that you're going to force them to do, make sure it has a value to you or the company as a whole, because there is an effort associated with this. And what I hate seeing when I'm talking to the people actually using Oasis is like, well, why do you click that box? And what just kills me inside is, well, because my the boss said so. And then when I finally get around to talking to the bosses and find out the reports he's running surrounding that little user search tag or whatever it is, I found out they're not even using it. So now I have to figure out how to deliver the bad news that, the owner basically is setting up some cost here that doesn't result in any effort, or results in effort, but doesn't result in value. So think of that a little bit as we go through this. That's kind of an important detail there. So again, back to this, no process, there's no data. So if it does have value to you and there's no process to make sure it goes, then you're probably not going to get a result at the end of the year when you run your report. Okay, let's go create a project. All right, I'm under projects, create a brand new one here. My example, by the way, this is a setup element. So if you have multiple work groups, so that's that work group or territories, I can literally make this thing pop up and say Arkansas, Mississippi, or wherever, okay? I click the associated territory and that transaction, this quote, and everything created from it will be in that territory. That's an important detail there. Another thing that kills me is I walk in and I find out that the person that works in Arkansas has the same pop-up as the person that works between Arkansas, Mississippi, and maybe somewhere else. And every time they create a project, they have to click Arkansas or scroll down and click whatever, Tennessee or whatever. Only give them the ones that they use. Otherwise, they're scrolling and it's wasting their time. But more on that, ask us about the setup on this. The key here is I'm going to pick example forms, whatever it is, or Arkansas as the case is. All right, I have my project here, project name. I think everyone knows most of the stuff. I'm going to go straight for the primary conversation today, and that's kind of preparing or thinking through your reports before you actually start running them at the end of the year. All right, initial phase, general tab. This is where a good chunk of the project and actually all the reports kind of flow off of this in one form or fashion. So kind of running through these, and I consider these the biggies. And again, if you have questions on any of these, definitely, put in a note for Trinity to kind of follow up on at the end here. And I'll pay attention here, or yell at me, Trinity, if there's a good one over projects, because I'll pause for that before going to orders. So a couple of things. There's a lot of details I'm going to skip, but going into the first one is who won by. Now, what I'm able to do is I can set up, there's actually a page in here and say, hey, we got it, or the other guys got it. And you can set up your competitors in here. There's several ways to do that. So did whoever your competitor is in the territory get it? That allows you to do win-loss reports and seeing who is getting the different jobs. There's a couple of reports that do that. They're real nice. So again, back to what's the effort versus the cost. That's usually one that I have a conversation on, and there are only a handful of folks that actually go to that level. So that's a goodie where it takes a lot of effort on the sales team to find out, a reasonable number of jobs to put in here to make a result that makes sense. So, all right, user search tags. You can see right here, I have a bunch of them, and all these are just junk we've created over the years. But the main thing is my just testing right here that we just set up. So I can click it as a yes or a no. And if I don't have it clicked, that means nobody asked the question. So, did we ask the specifier if we got a good spec, or did they approve our type A fixture or whatnot? Yes, no, or, nobody asked, that type of thing. Okay. All right, so getting into getting the specifiers here for a second. So this database is set up to where if I type in whatever I want, it will deny me that effort. So if you have a database that's set up where you can type in literally whatever you want, it'll turn the background there yellow. The reason why it does that is trying to tell you that your reporting options aren't as good as if you were to set up that architect or engineer, whoever it is, in the system so you can report on at the end of the year. So if it's not set up, I can't run a total. So that is, I can't tell you how many dollars or count that a specific architect had. It just can't do it because it's just raw text. I suppose we could, but the results would be weird. The bottom line is, set them up in the customer section, mark them as an architect, then I can type in ABC. It'll show whoever it is. That's a distributor, that's close enough. And as soon as I put that in, it'll stamp them as an entry inside the system. So, and by the way, you can do this. You can actually have a firm that's doing multiple different roles on a job. And in this case, I guess, the distributor is an architect. That's kind of odd to me, but anyway, that is possible. So take a look at that. That'll improve your reporting and for the end of the year on, as far as search tags go, or specifiers. Okay. Another biggie that a lot of folks miss or don't think about too much is project rank. And another thing that just kills me, I mean, there's just certain things that stab me in the heart for some reason, is I'll go in and I'll click on it and it says literally this listing, which is our default listing. And I guess it's okay, but it's unassigned, or I'm not sure what that means, but huge opportunity, large opportunity. Those are the default ones we put in Oasis. And I remember going through the brain damage of what to put in there, a decade or so ago. And we come up with this mess, just kind of prodding people, hopefully to change them. There are different thought processes on what to put in here. I think that's a different conversation. But if you've chosen well as far as what to use as a project rank, I find that often becomes an interesting report at the end of the year to kind of find out how you're doing with the overall ranking of your jobs. So, but anyway, that can be a deeper conversation on it, but that is one to kind of talk through. Another biggie right here that a lot of folks missed is the vertical market. We put that in several years ago. We sent out newsletters on it and everything, and a lot of folks, I think, kind of missed it. But that is a biggie, and I'm hearing more and more from a lot of folks out there that are saying, hey, I want to find out how I'm doing in, I don't know, education right now. Maybe that's the area that they're concerned with, because they've only seen a few jobs through. So they're trying to find out how much money they're actually quoting, how much money they're actually running through in orders, and kind of match that up against, other sources of that information to find out how much of the market they have. So, if I'm trying to grow my business, what's the thing you want to do is find out where you're weak at. So maybe it's, education or something else. You can add entries in here, and you can call us, drop emails to the support team, and they'll show you how to add new entries in here. But that is a biggie right there for a lot of folks, and it just seems to get more and more important for groups I'm talking to anyway. Okay, and the last biggie on this screen right here is the sales accounts. The sales accounts down here, again, we want to identify who's getting credit on the job. And usually that's the outside sales team, but I have seen some other things in there for various reasons that make some sense. There's some reasons not, that I've seen are kind of odd for some of the entries in there, but regardless, you really need a process for when this gets filled out. You can quote it and do everything on the job, but as soon as you start creating orders, whatever's here gets stamped into the order by default. If this is blank, you will be required to make some choices on the order before you're actually able to print the order. We did that on purpose because there are just a few checks in here where we actually force a process. In other words, force you to make a decision on who's getting credit on that job, because that in a number of groups that we work with, that basically becomes someone's paycheck. Yeah, so that elevated to one of the highest levels of, we got to do something and force a decision there. So most of the time we don't. All right, next item on here. So that's vertical market sales accounts, customers and contractors. So one thing, again, every once in a while I'll see customer and contractors show up here. On this database, I don't have them show up by default. I'll let the system add them later. So they're not checked. There's a place to identify the different roles, by the way, and which ones show up by default, and then which ones are required to fill in before I can save the project. So those are settings that are in there, just some ideas for later. But don't add your distributor here unless you happen to be working with them right out the get-go on this project. Maybe it's a homeowner that's doing something really cool and they're talking to the distributor. I've been that person actually. So in that case, yeah, you might put the distributor in here as the specifier because they're working with the owner, the homeowner, probably in that case. But anyway, specifiers there. Usually all the entries you're going to be interested in on contractors and distributors, go ahead and start adding them down here. And I'm just going to add a few of these just for argument's sake. And then I'll go ahead and add in a contractor, just a couple of them just for argument's sake. And I can go at this depth. And for the groups that really get into taking a look at the reports and understanding things, that works out pretty well to go through the effort or cost, if you want to look at it from an owner standpoint. But the main thing is, if it makes some sense to report on at the end of the year, go ahead and get with your team and set up a process to collect that level of information. The area that I think is pretty much an easy sell nowadays, and again, send me a note or anything like that if you disagree. But usually adding all the distributors in here has become an easy sell because it makes some sense as far as the rest of how Oasis works and how people send out quotes. That also helps us with win-loss reports associated with the distributors, and most people are sold at that point. Whoever they quoted, they put them in here and they mark them as win and loss at the end of the, what's ready to create the orders. But underneath here are the contractors. And I'm finding that's becoming an easier sell, although, I still have some folks that don't really see the value, the depth of value on that. But there is a thing called the win-loss tile that you can set up that really gives some nice results now with the contractors. So I can run through and find out, well, how am I doing with the specific contractor out there? How many times do I quote them essentially, or they're part of the job and they're actually winning or losing it? So if you have a strong contractor, you may actually get a little closer to them than you might with someone else who isn't doing quite as well for one reason or another, or you might help them. I don't know. But basically it gives you data if it's here that you can report on and then make some decisions or confirm what you're thinking, or feeling in your gut, so to speak. Yeah. So that's the customer side, customers and contractors. By the way you'd normally identify this is I mark the status and then ABC contractor is the win. Notice it updated all the information here and it changed the status. So this is the biggie here. The biggest biggie is the final quote status. Now, there's been a lot of conversations and a lot of interesting thought processes put through this over the years, but generally Oasis does an okay job, except for one little area here, on projects. So if you quote something and that's all we know, we'll talk about it in a minute. But generally inside of Oasis, if you get an order and you're converting quotes to orders, it asks, hey, would you like to mark it as order pending? And then if you create the order, it'll mark it as ordered. So all that works well. It updates the win-loss reports and everything mostly is correct. However, we're starting to recommend to folks, by the way, this is where you can actually say, hey, All Light won and whoever that is, they won the bidding war, but at the end of the day, you lost it to your competitor. So you can't actually do that. That's an option there. But anyway, I'll just leave that okay for right now. The main thing here is the status on this gets updated when I quote it or when I create orders. It'll go ahead and mark it as order pending, and then we get a win-loss report. But there's a lot of other statuses in here, actually two specific statuses in here that I think are what I'll call final. There's really three I think that people need to think about somehow. And the first one obviously is ordered. That's a final status of the quote. So it says we got orders on it. It's a win, if you will, because we got orders. The other two are abandoned and lost. Okay. So, and these are a little bit harder. So the lost is if you take the time to go out and find out, okay, we lost it and our competitors up the road actually got the job. So that's a true loss. Abandoned is, the owner basically decided because of, the pandemic or something like that, they're going to postpone the job, postpone the project indefinitely. So that's an abandon. They walked away from it because they simply aren't going to spend the money right now. So what do you do if you have a lot of projects in there inside of Oasis that you really need to go through and clean up? So you can, if you want, let me show you how to do this real quick, is you can actually go in and select them. So, today I just have my one job, I guess, or my one job in there. But however long that list is, there's a tool in here. Let's edit, mark projects. And what I'm able to do is stamp a bunch of projects with a specific item in here. So I can say, hey, mark them all as abandoned. Okay. And this is kind of a question. Do you mark them as abandoned or lost? So I have some groups that say, hey, it's better to just say it's lost, whether we really know it's lost or not. And then pick out the ones that were abandoned, because you found out more about it. So anyway, regardless, you can select a whole bunch of those. Let me see if I can find something a little bit bigger. I just don't want to dump the whole database. I can select so many jobs or whatever that's in there, or do my search, everything that was quoted last month, maybe, or 6 months ago, or whatever. Probably not last month, but everything is 6 months to, 2019 to 6 months ago, or whatever. Now, then I can actually go through and say mark projects as lost or abandoned or whatever. So Seems like most people are selecting the loss, by the way, if you go back in time far enough and just mark them out. So anyway, it allows you to clean them up. If you end up getting if the job comes back, so the owner comes back and says, hey, let's go ahead and do that job. Got money, the economy is strong. Let's go and do it. You can always take that project that was quote lost and then turn it back into a quote and send it out. So it's kind of up to you on that one. Anyway, those are interesting conversations. The other thing that's neat is you can actually go through and mark a bunch of the jobs with a vertical market. So I can go through and select everything that has school in the name, and then manually go through and select a bunch of them and just mark them as educational or whatever, and then stamp those, and that allows you to move stuff around. Again, this really is all for reporting, just nice little setup information. And if you don't take the time to stamp all these transactions, these quotes, correctly, this is one of the few nice little catch-up tools we added in there, where you can go through and stamp a bunch of them historically, and then start collecting that data without having to open each individual quote, which is painful. So, all right, go through there, cancel out of that. Yeah, final quote status, we went through that. All right, like I said, any questions on that one, let me know. I can bounce through a bunch of details in there. I was just trying to keep it fairly high level, and Trinity and I can answer those questions. All right, orders. This is where everything is at the end of the process. In other words, most of the reports that we end up doing either are directly reporting on orders or indirectly reporting on orders through invoices or payments or something like that. The order type. So inside of Oasis, let me just create an order real quick. Inside of Oasis, you have, and again, because my system's set up, it's asking, hey, which work group would you like to go in? Mississippi, Arkansas, that type of thing. I'll select my standard one here. And what we have are order type. So most people are only aware of stock and project. So if you take a project, convert it to an order inside of Oasis, it'll stamp the order by default as project, which usually is correct. You see some cases where it's not. If you go into Oasis and create an order like I just did on the fly, it assumes that, hey, you have a just an order that is a stock order or something from the distributor, that type of thing. But a few groups have gotten very specific on what they want to collect here, and they're actually asking questions like the discretionary and a whole bunch of other stuff that, I'll be totally honest, I don't fully understand. But the key here is, if you want those those details, you have to put a process around it where someone can actually at the company there select discretionary or whatever it is that you need to identify, and put it on the order. Then you can report on it later. Another one that's in here that is used a lot, especially by groups that have downloads that come in from from the factories automatically, and that is EDI. So if it comes in and it doesn't find an Oasis, we assume it's probably an EDI order that was sent from distribution to the manufacturer, and you're just getting a copy of it. But you might want to check that, because another one I see ever so often is spec. So basically getting spec credit on it. Okay. So that's order type. Screen a little bit smaller here. Search tags, they're in here as well. Again, there's a lot of stuff. I've seen this used for so many different reasons, and it's every year is new, basically a new set of stuff in here, seems like. All right, specifiers, same process here with the whatever you want. The main thing is put the data in there so you can report on it. And even more important, if you have the customer entry in there, then we can go to the next step and identify exactly how much money you're making off of the specifier or the contractor or whoever else is in here. And those are big things to understand. I've had a lot of conversations with owners over the years, simply by making sure all this is going. They'll identify, hey, one contractor out there is 15% of their income. Whoa, wait a minute. That's a nice thing to know, but kind of uncomfortable too, or maybe even higher than that. All right, search tag, specifiers are done. Combined orders, manufacturers. Okay, I get this conversation every once in a while too. So let's go back to our brand headquarters, and let's say you have a conglomerate you're working with. Typically, most orders, especially if they're converted from a project, the header is going to be basically whatever the main company is. So you can think your conglomerate out there. And then I'll put in my customer here. That's fine. And just whatever I can type in. All right, main thing I want to show is on the items tab. And for those of you that have gotten into this, and again, it's something that I like to assert every so often, because I'm surprised every once in a while when I have a fairly good sized group that just hasn't seen this before. But the main thing I can do here is break this out at the line level to the individual brand. So if I put in brand BA, so that's my brand A. Again, think of your conglomerates and the different brands. But what the main thing here is, if I don't have the individual, must be set up. Yeah, it's not set up for commission order. If I don't have, yeah, there we go. So if I don't have the individual brands identified on the line or somewhere on the job, then I can't run a report showing how you're doing within each one of those brands. I can just run it on the parent manufacturer. So within Oasis, on an order, this is just a basic commission order, same, well, easy, resale is even easier. But the main thing is identify each one of these brands, and from there, I can roll it up and say exactly how much I'm getting, either on the individual brand or, as the parent manufacturer altogether. How am I doing with it, that conglomerate? So, and that's a huge one right now. But every so often, I'll get the, why should I do that or whatever? Just do it. And if you have any questions on the reports, just give us a call, because there's more people are doing this than are not nowadays. So it's kind of flipping the other direction nowadays. Okay. All right. Kind of finishing up here. So it is November 16th. And I have a little bit of a fear about this webinar here, that I'll say something and resonate, because the thing I'm worried about is a group will really want to make the change like on the 17th, and then want to run a report at the end of the year and call me and be very upset that it didn't work out. The key is data management is a big deal. It is not easy. It's hard, and you really don't appreciate that until you kind of go through the process of cleaning up your data. And again, we're a company too. We go through the same set of headaches, and it's a rough process sometimes. So what I would recommend is, number one, you're going to go look at your database and hopefully, have some ideas on how to improve it, because that's really what I think we always need to look at, especially if you're in a management or an ownership position, is how can you make things better? How can you make things better on the employees? How can you make things better as far as profits go or whatever? But January 1st is when you want to implement the changes. Okay, not really the 17th, please. But I can see where there's some of the changes, like that manufacturer product type, where you can just go flip those flags and be done with it, because it really doesn't affect a whole lot of, it doesn't affect the actual transaction. It's just a lookup off the manufacturer. And ask us if you have questions on the different data, the easy ones like that. But you need to pick your battles, because as soon as you go through and say, hey, we're going to split up our orders or stamp all the projects with a vertical market or whatever, you're going to end up assigning somebody some work. And that can end up, well, it's going to cost the company time or someone some effort there. And think of the value you're going to get out of that. So if it's a high value item, yeah, you might have to go buy dinner for someone to go do it, or give them some bonuses or whatever. But you're going to have to think of it like that there's always this effort or cost associated with it, because that is the hard reality. And then don't start don't start like right now and try to run into your reporting, because that'll be frustrating. Call us if you have questions, if it's kind of in the gray or whatnot. But that really is, like I said, the main worry that I have here. But as was explained to me years and years ago by some mentors, I'll leave it at that, is if you're going to be into reporting, or if you're owning a company or managing people, whatever the case is, and there's a few people around here that believe I don't do this, but I do, and it's called report early and report often. So you need to find out those key points that you want, or changes you want in reporting going on. And as soon as you start implementing those changes, start running reports, find out where the differences are, the gaps, if you will, and start adjusting. And then report often. Do it once a month at a minimum, because you're going to have personnel changes, you're going to have process changes, you're going to have the world changing, and the hard reality is it's going to affect your reports, and you have to make a decision. Again, what's the cost value? You always have to worry about that cost versus value off of that. And if it's still valuable to you, reassert that process so you can collect that report at the end of the year. And then keep it going, because that change will affect what's recorded in Oasis on there. Okay. Anyway, it keeps the data clean, and if you start seeing some variances between what you want and what you're actually getting out of it, you can start affecting change immediately, as opposed to waiting to the end of the year and then giving me a call saying how are we going to get to what you need. So I have those conversations pretty frequently this time of year. All right, that's the content I set up for today. Like I said, I really wanted to have a report, how to prepare for reports webinar, and then next week we'll be running various reports in Oasis, and I doubt we'll cover all of them, but the main thing is just to get you going. Here's some ideas. So